What a crazy ride. What a crazy ride. Whenever you think you've made it, the universe, God, consciousness will always test you. And it is for the greater good. It is to take you to the next level. But I'm experiencing this right now and I'm right in it. So in the last video, I touched upon moving from wanting to control life, from the fleshy desire to control and create this perfect life, to moving towards surrender and trust, and trusting, however you want to frame it, universe, consciousness, God. I'm just going to use the word God from this point on in. Trusting that God will provide, trusting that you surrendering to God is the best way forward. And in my experience, that's a very long journey. I'm about 10 years into it now, and I still oscillate all the time between fear and wanting to control the external, to surrendering, letting go and trusting what is. So my next video was going to be that I'm there. It was going to be basically stating that I now have a trust and a calmness within me, that it's more than a belief, but I'll use that word, a belief, a knowing, that if I align to truth and make truth my everything and authenticity and basically the good in life, if I align with that and dedicate myself to that, I will be provided for. Therefore I can go to South America, therefore I can take these risks, because God will always make sure I'm sheltered and fed. And I still believe that. There's still an underlying knowing that that's true. But whenever you get to these new points of trust, these new points of surrender, God will come along and shake that foundation to make sure it's set, to make sure that you're ready for the next level. And that is exactly what has just happened to me. Without boring you too much with the technicals, there's something called AdSense, Google AdSense, which you have to have an account on if you have a monetized YouTube channel. And when I started my AdSense, I was living in Thailand. So the country is registered to Thailand, and you can't change it once you've done it. Anyway, in order to receive my first payment, I verified my identity with my passport, and they said, "Not allowed! It's not a Thai passport." I was like, well, that's because I'm not Thai. So long story short, I've got to cancel that AdSense account and start a new one. Now there was a period of time where I didn't know what this meant. I didn't know if it meant the money that I have already earned on YouTube over the last month since being monetized would be lost. I didn't know if it meant I had to go through the whole rigmarole of reapplying to be a partner, to be monetized, which is highly stressful for me because they rejected me 4 times. Finally approved me after I deleted all my thumbnails and content that they wouldn't like. The thought of going through that process again, the fear it would create in me around whether or not I would get monetized, was making me feel sick. Anyway, after a lot of back and forth today on the YouTube chat, it turns out that it's not that worst case scenario. The money is still held. However, whilst they wait to approve my new AdSense account, I'm not going to be monetized. And that can take up to 2 to 3 weeks. I can feel a sickness in my stomach, like I can feel a tightness here. I can feel fear. I can feel me dropping out of trust and going back to that fleshy, like, oh no, how am I going to survive? All these external fears are coming up, and this is always the case as I have found it in my 10 years of completely leaning in to deeper, higher purposes in life. Every time, it's like one of my teachers used to describe it as a tamakali, which is the Native American word for pyramids, and they used to build their pyramids like this. So basically, every time you get to a new platform, you do the work, you go through the stuff, which is the climb, which is blooming hard work. Then you get to the platform, and it's all overgrown, and you shave it off and you make a nice space and you've got your place to live, and then suddenly you're up the next one, and it just never stops. I'm currently, bearing in mind this has all happened this morning, I'm currently in this space of mind like, oh no, but there is a deeper sense, a deeper knowing that, as always, this is just happening for a reason, to help me to let go more, to help me surrender more, to help me to trust more. And ultimately, we can't do that intellectually. The only way we can do it is through experience and through feeling it. Experience is everything, and I'm a great believer that actually the only way to enlightenment or peace, calmness, connection is through exhausting all the karmatic experiences that you need to exhaust, whether that's drinking, taking substances, sexual stuff. It's only through the experience of it that it will be transmuted, and it's inevitable, if you're doing it consciously, that it will be transmuted, because they all lose their pull after a while through experience. A really good example for this with me would be sex addiction. I feel like I've beaten it. I feel like I'll never have a random sexual encounter again. But I'm going to be tested. I'm going to be tested when I get to South America, and there's lots of beautiful young Latinos. And actually, I already know it's inevitable that I will fall back into it for a little while. I will have to experience that for a little while to let it go again. You know, it's very easy to be celibate when there's no options, essentially, or really crappy options. But when it's like a load of hot Latino people who are actually interested in you, potentially, I imagine that will be the case. Always seems to be when you travel as a white man, that people are very interested in you. White privilege, anyone? I could do one of two things. I could be like, oh no, I can't fall back into that. Resist, 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 from like a fleshy intellectual place. Or I could just surrender to it and allow the experience to happen consciously. And I'm pretty sure if I do that, I'll exhaust it within 2 to 3 weeks, or 2 to 3 people. And that is the only way. It is the only way. This spiritual journey is so experiential. You know. Is that a word? You can't do it from the mind. Of course you can learn all these concepts and all these theories, and you can sound very good. This is what's called the spiritual ego. So as people awaken from the mainstream slumber and they're completely in their narcissistic ego, they then find spirituality, and that just gets transferred to spiritual ego, and we start collecting certificates. And you know, most of the modalities that people do is so they can tell others that they've done it, or so they can put it on Facebook. But this has to be experienced. You have to go through that stage. It's an inevitable part of the stage. I'm not criticizing any of it. It's the only way to do it, for experiencing it from where you're at in that moment, which is always very egoic, until you've really experienced a lot, essentially a lot of ayahuasca or men's work or some modality that really cracks you open. But even that, even those modalities are still external. You know, eventually it has to get to the place where your modality is breathing and surrendering and opening and being still and accepting. You know, acceptance is such a huge part. Not sure how well I've expressed all that, if that's resonated. But yeah, essentially I just thought it was really interesting that on the day I was going to do a video saying, I trust, I'm done with this fleshy stuff, I totally trust the universe now. But I got this big whoosh, and this realization that I still don't trust, you know. So what it comes from, it's a lack of belief in ultimately God and trusting God, but it's actually a lack of belief in self. So I'm like, I'm earning money off YouTube, and the belief is there's no other way I can do it. A lack of trust. If that gets taken away from me, I'm screwed. But also there is this deeper part of me and this deeper knowing that if that gets taken away from me, something else will be provided. But it's bridging that gap and trusting during that gap. It's very hard for the brain to do, which is why this can't be intellectual. It can only be felt and experienced and surrendered to. Anyway, I don't think it's that bad. I think I'm just going to be demonetized for a week or two, which is really frustrating, especially as I've got a video doing really well at the minute. But yeah, what can you do other than surrender and trust that it's all going to be okay? So I'd be interested to hear how that's landed with you, what it's brought up in you, whether it resonates with you in the comments, and also your shared experiences of this. I think it's I think it's really important that we share this stuff for the people that are wanting this information. I've really been enjoying the comments on this channel. At the moment I'm responding to every single one. Obviously it'll get to a point where I can't, but it's deep, it's real. Very, very interesting. Alright, thanks. Please like and subscribe, and I'll probably be back tomorrow with more musings. See you soon. Also, I should mention I ain't done this for a while. I don't like doing it, but as I no longer have any income right now, if anyone does want to support me financially, if you appreciate the videos I create, then there is a Patreon, buy me a coffee, and my bank details below. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.